Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku was the Titan Shifter and fell in love with Lady Nagant Movie 1. Before we start, please go support President Thanos for writing that awesome fanfic. Izuku Midoriya was born with a great quirk, well that's what his mother always said. Though he knew the truth, he knew why there were always heroes around when he went outside. People were afraid of him and his power, and he couldn't blame them. He would be scared too if a child had the amount of power he had. He was awoken one night by the sound of his window opening and someone entering. Before he could jolt up or scream, a gun barrel was put to his head. Behind it he could see eyes of a hero, eyes of someone who didn't want to be there. Just before he was sure he was about to be killed, she put her barrel away and collapsed to the ground in tears. Both of them monsters in their own right, both seeking to help others, both helping each other along the way. Monsters. Get away from me! Freak. Monstrous devil. These were words Izuku Midoriya heard every day of his life. Every day people would yell at him and shove him around. Adults, kids, even heroes would go out of their way to make sure he knew his place in society, at the bottom. Though they made sure to never hurt him, they knew what he could do if he got even a small scrape. It had been 10 long years since it began, and he was only 15. Just as he walked into his classroom, he was pinned to the wall, a hand striking the wall next to his head with an explosion. Bakugo, Deku. Katsuki Bakugo had made it to class before he did. Bakugo, yelling, "You damn nerd, you've been hiding from me for weeks!" Izuku nervously looked around the room, seeing the usual glares of distaste from his classmates. Izuku. Sorry, Kaken. I just... Bakugo, yelling, "Just what? Just wanted to be left alone. Someone like you doesn't get to be left alone." The bell then rang, giving Izuku a moment to slip away from Bakugo and make it to his seat. Izuku kept himself as tightly bound together as he could, kept his head down, and just looked at his hands as the teacher walked inside. It would be so easy, too easy, to stop their hate-filled gazes. Teacher yelling, "Midoriya." Izuku snapped out of his thoughts and shot his gaze up to look at his teacher. Izuku. Here, sir. The teacher scoffed. Teacher. You're lucky you're allowed to be here, at least pay attention. Izuku nodded meekly before the teacher turned around and continued teaching the class. He reached into his bag and pulled out a notebook to write in. As he wrote, he thought back to just why he was treated as he was. All he could remember was screaming. Screams of fear, pain, and grief. It was hot, like steam was blowing in his face, but he wasn't bothered. He could see clearly, but also couldn't see a thing. One voice cut through the screams, the voice of his mother, Inko. But what about his dad? Where was he? Inko yelling, "Izuku, are you okay?" He felt someone embrace him, but that was when he passed out. The bell rang and Izuku looked to the clock. Izuku. Already? The school day had ended, though unlike other students, Izuku wasn't excited. He packed up and put his backpack on. He quickly slipped out of the room, just barely avoiding Bakugo, and made his way out of the school. Almost as soon as he was out of sight of the school, he was pushed to the ground by a man. Man! Cannibal freak! Izuku got up and continued to walk. He only got to the end of the road when someone else stopped him. A local hero he didn't bother to learn about. Hero. Halt, what are you doing here? You know you aren't supposed to come to this corner. Izuku. Sorry. I'll go around. Izuku turned around to leave, only for the hero to grab his shoulder. Hero. You're coming with me. Izuku ripped his shoulder away from the hero. Izuku yelling, "No." He began to back away as the hero walked towards him. Izuku yelling, "I'll leave, stay away." Izuku turned and ran back the way his came before turning down an alley. Hero yelling, "Get back here!" Izuku ran down the alley just to find he hit a dead end. Izuku. No, 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 no. He felt a hand grab his shoulder just before the hero spun him around. Izuku yelling, "Please." The hero pinned him to the brick wall. Hero. If I take care of you, then the people here won't have to fear anything again. Izuku watched him pull out a knife. Izuku. Why you don't want this? Hiro yelling, "Die for the people!" He plunged the knife into Izuku's chest. "Izuku, I'm sorry." "Hiro, wa." Bright yellow lightning filled the alleyway. The civilians nearby looked at it in horror. They knew what it meant. The monster had used his quirk. What seemed to be a ball of fire was flung from the alley, though once it hit the ground, it was revealed to be the charred body of the hero. Through the dust, a pair of hands emerged on either side of the alley. A roar could be heard across the city. Izuku Midoriya was pacing back and forth as she was nervous beyond compare. It had been hours since school ended and Izuku still hadn't returned. It also didn't help that she swore she heard a roar. It was then the apartment door flung open and was slammed shut. She looked over just to see Izuku drop his backpack, which had broken straps, and run into his room. As his door closed, she heard it lock. She ran to his door and knocked. "Izuku baby? What hap?" Izuku yelling, "Not now." She could hear the tears on his voice. He really did use it. "Honey, you aren't a monster. You protected yourself, that's fine." Izuku yelling, "Tell that to the family of the hero I incinerated." Inko sighed. "I'll put dinner in the fridge. You can come out and reheat it when you're hungry. If you want to talk, I'll always be here." She waited for a response for a few moments before walking away from the door. Little did she know, Izuku was already asleep. 5 hours later. Izuku slowly opened his eyes to see it was now dark out. He felt a slight breeze, which was weird. He never left his window open. It was then he heard a sound, like metal scraping and skin being pushed. He looked to his side to find the barrel of a gun being pointed at his head. His eyes wide and his gaze went up the barrel. He matched eyes with the wielder of the weapon, thought he could now see it was coming out of this person's elbow. He was looking at a woman with purple and pink hair and a ponytail who was wearing a dark purple bodysuit, a hero suit. He looked her in the eyes, just to see something he didn't expect. Hesitance, fear, pity, anger, sadness. Izuku, whispering, "Why?" She tried to speak, but she choked on her words. Her gun quickly retracted into her elbow and she fell to her knees, her face looking at the ground. Izuku propped himself up with his elbow. Now that he got a good look at her, he recognized her as the best sharpshooter in Japan, Lady Nagant. "Lady Nagant? I can't." He watched as tears fell from her face. She looked up at him. "Nagant, I can't kill him." It was clear she was talking to someone else. Izuku got off his bed and kneeled beside her. "Izuku. Miss Nagant?" From this distance he could slightly hear chatter coming from an earpiece she was wearing, but he couldn't make out what was being said. "Nagant, I refuse. I won't kill him. He did nothing wrong. He defended himself." What was said next clearly angered her, as she ripped the earpieces out and threw it. She looked at it on the floor for a few seconds before slowly turning to Izuku. "Izuku, you, is everything all right?" Before Izuku could react, she brought her arms out and hugged him. "Nagant. Midoriya." Izuku. "Why, yes." "Nagant. I know this is sudden, but I don't think you're a monster. You're just a scared boy who's being attacked for no reason." Izuku. But I killed a hero today." "Nagant. You did it in self-defense, it was his fault." Izuku began to cry again. Izuku. "Still he's dead because I used my quirk. His family has to grieve because of me." Nagant remained silent for a moment. "Nagant. If you're a monster, then so am I." Izuku. "Why?" Nagant. "I've killed hundreds of people. Some of them villains, some corrupt heroes, and many more innocent civilians who simply asked too many questions. Even All Might was in my crosshairs once." Izuku backed away from the hug slightly. Izuku. Then, why not me?" Nagant. "Because I'll tell you the same thing they told me. Even with your quirk, even though it may be used to kill, you can still be a great hero someday." Izuku went quiet and she gave him a small smile. Nagant. "After all, it's only the monsters that can push the heroes to become better." She then stood up and walked back to his window. Nagant. Remember this, you can only have as much freedom as you give yourself. Goodbye, Midoriya. When she finished speaking, she leapt from the window and took her leave. Choice. Inko. Are you sure? It was the next morning. Despite only a few hours having passed, Izuku knew what he wanted to do. He nodded when his mother asked her question. Izuku. Yeah. I'm going to be a hero. Inko. But why? Just yesterday you were beating yourself up over that hero. Izuku smiled, a rare sight. Izuku. Even a monster can save lives. I want to prove that I can be more than the monster they see me as. Inko smiled widely and hugged Izuku. Inko. I'll support you all the way. Izuku returned the hug. Izuku. Thanks, Mom. She let go of him and patted him on the shoulder. Inko. Now you need to get to school. Do you want me to drive you? Izuku nodded. Izuku. Yeah. I don't feel like dealing with the people today. Inko smiled. Inko. Then let's get moving, you're gonna be late. She grabbed an apple and handed it to him as they left the apartment. Chairman. You do realize what you've done, right? Lady Nagant was standing in a secluded office while a Hero Commission chairman paced in front of her. Nagant. Yes. I refused a target. Chairman. Good, so you haven't gone mad. So tell me. He got in her face. Chairman yelling. Why is that brat still alive? Nagant didn't react. Nagant. Because I refused to kill someone who only defended himself. In fact, if that hero was still alive, I'd shoot him instead. The chairman seemed to get more anger and stomped his way back to his desk, placing his hands on it. Nagant. Is it safe to assume the commission president can hear us? The chairman laughed. Chairman. Yes, she is. Nagant. Good. Then she won't have to investigate. Madam President, this is my resignation. But to leave you on good terms, I'll end another monster here and now. She raised her arm and extended her rifle, aiming directly at the chairman. Nagant. Goodbye, Chairman. She fired, and he fell to the floor dead. She then put her hands up as the room flooded with guards and other heroes. Nagant. I may be a monster, but I'm no longer your monster to control. Her hands were forced behind her back as she was forced to the ground and subsequently arrested. Izuku got out of his mother's car and walked towards the school. It was then the straight face he held for his mother fell away. In truth, his decision wasn't to prove anything as grand as what he said. Instead, he merely wanted to prove that his quirk could be used for some good, if any. He looked down his shirt at where the knife the hero used stabbed into him, just to see perfectly smooth skin. Izuku. He did it for nothing. He looked up again and made his way to the classroom. Even if he didn't know it, he was walking with just a little more confidence than before. He found his seat and sat down as others entered afterwards. The teacher entered just after Bakugo as the bell rang and took his place at the front of the room. Teacher. All right, I see everyone's here, good. As you all know, your time here at Aldera Junior High is coming to an end soon. Which is what these are for. He lifted a stack of papers. Teacher. Today, you all choose your future careers. He then tossed them all up into the air. Teacher. But what am I kidding? You all want to be heroes. The class erupted in cheers and students began to use their quirks, though the teacher quickly calmed them down. Teacher. Now, those of you who already know where you're going can write down your options and hand them to me. He then walked around the room and handed out the selection sheets to the class. A few students just wrote down a few words and got up to hand in the papers, but two only wrote one option, Izuku and Bakugo. The two quickly got up and approached the teacher, who just reached up and took the papers without looking at them. After a few minutes, a couple other students went up, but not everyone turned in their papers. The teacher then stood up with the handed-in papers. Teacher. Let's see here. Yes, 8 of you have already chosen your careers. Good, I see we have someone aiming pretty high. Bakugo, you're trying for UA? Bakugo, damn right. Random student 1. But isn't their acceptance rate like 1 in 100? Random student 2. I heard their tests are way harder than any other schools. Random Student 3. You're crazy, Bakugo. Bakugo got up, stood on his seat, and planted a foot on his desk. Bakugo. I aced the online tests and my quirk is the most powerful here. If anyone's getting in, it's me. Teacher. Alright, sit down, Bakugo. Let's see, did anyone else apply for someplace as big as UA? He flipped through the papers a little before coming upon one specific paper that made him freeze. He skimmed through the papers again before going back to that one. Teacher. It appears that Izuku Midoriya is also applying for UA. Izuku quickly moved out of the way as an explosive slap hit his desk. Bakugo, yelling. Deku, what do you think you're trying to pull? Izuku. I just want T to be a hero. Like everyone else. Bakugo went to grab Izuku by the collar. Teacher. Enough, Bakugo, you know what'll happen if you hurt him. Bakugo grumbled but let Izuku go and sat back down. The rest of the school day was uneventful, though there was an increase in glares from just about everybody. It wasn't until his walk home that this changed. Forward. Izuku was walking home, newly fixed backpack put on over his shoulders. Overall, today was a good day. He let out a big breath as he walked through the streets. His phone vibrated and when he checked it, it was a text from his mom. Inko, have to work late. Please pick up some eggs before you get home. Love you? Izuku, okay. Love you too, Mom. He put his phone away and turned a corner, heading deeper into the city to find a grocery store. I finally caught you. You're pretty slippery, you know that? A yell could be heard from inside a plastic bottle as a man who looked like a pile of sludge had been stuffed into it. Sludge yelling, Damn you, All Might! All Might put the criminal into his pocket. All Might. Just settle down until I get you to the police. Though, I thought there was more of you. All Might bent his legs before leaping high into the air. During his leap, he could hear and feel the villain thrashing around, trying to escape. All Might. Settle down, you're going nowhere. It was then that the villain calmed down. All Might then continued to the police station where he landed and 2 officers came out to greet him. Officer 1. Hey All Might, why are you here? All Might. I was just passing through and managed to catch this man stealing a purse. He took out the bottle and handed it to the officer. All Might. Be careful, he's very slippery. Officer 2. Where's the rest of him? All Might looked at him confused. All Might. The rest? Officer 1. Yeah, we've been after this guy for months. If at least half his sludge is separated from him, he can choose which section to control. We have a lot of dead sludge piles in evidence. All Might let out a cough. All Might. I see. I'll try and find him again, be on the lookout. He then leapt away. Officer 2. What do you think would happen if we gave him all his sludge back? Officer 1. That's the kind of question that leads to jailbreaks. An explosion went off several blocks away. Officer 1. Shit, let's move. The ground shook, almost knocking Izuku from his feet. An explosion? Where? He looked up and saw the tall pillar of smoke only a couple buildings away from him. Izuku and a few other civilians quickly ran over to the site of the explosion just to find the area nearby flattened and the area surrounding it to be on fire. In the center was a large glob of green sludge surrounding and suffocating a boy Izuku recognized as Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku. Kaken? A line of water appeared, stopping people from getting closer, as several heroes appeared that. Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, and Backdraft all appeared to help. The crowd cheered as the heroes began to do their jobs, but Izuku could see what was really happening. Kamui Woods stayed away from the fires, only grabbing the people close to windows. Mount Lady couldn't reach the scene due to her size. Backdraft was focused on keeping the civilians back, and Death Arms wasn't even trying to fight the villain or save Bakugo. Izuku. Why aren't they doing anything? He dying. Man, they aren't suited for this. None of them can help. I didn't think even someone like you would be this dumb. Izuku. But they should still try. Izuku looked at the people around him. They were still cheering on the heroes, even though they weren't doing anything to help. He then looked back at the street and other buildings. There were no other heroes. No one was coming. Izuku, no, this can't be happening. He looked back at Bakugo, who was releasing explosion after explosion, helplessly trying to fight. The villain was forcing its way into Bakugo's mouth more and more. Izuku, please, someone help. It was then Izuku and Bakugo locked eyes. For the first time in his life, Izuku saw fear in Bakugo's eyes, and it flipped something inside Izuku. Izuku, who am I kidding? They won't do anything to help him. He took a step forward. Izuku, I'm going to be a hero to prove that I can be useful. He took another and ducked under Backdraft's water. Izuku, if I'm going to be a hero, then I can't hesitate. He broke out into a sprint towards Bakugo. Izuku, I don't care if I get in trouble, but if the heroes won't save Kaken, then a monster will. Backdraft yelling, Get back here! Kamui Woods, what is that kid doing? Death Arms, it's the monster kid. Izuku sprinted at the villain and Bakugo. AMD the villain noticed. Sludge, oh? A little brat's come to save the day? Fine, let's have you fight this guy. The Sludge villain charged at Izuku while having Bakugo up front. Sludge yelling, Let's see how you handle explosions. The villain swung Bakugo's arm at Izuku, who brought his own arm up to block the attack. The explosion wasn't strong enough to knock Izuku back, but it did leave a burn on his arm, which began to emit steam. This confused the villain, which Izuku took advantage of by grabbing Bakugo's arm and pulling him from the villain. Bakugo hit the ground and began to cough up sludge. Before either of them could react, the villain grabbed onto Izuku and pulled him in. Sludge yelling, Ha ha ha, what a good show, you didn't think of this, did you, brat? Izuku tried to speak, but it just came out as gurgles. Bakugo laughed. Sludge yelling, What's so funny? Bakugo, the damn nerd's about to show you what. Sludge, what does that mean? Bakugo yelling, Have fun getting scorched. Bakugo launched himself backwards with an explosion, landing next to Death Arms. Death Arms, what is he doing? Bakugo, waiting for me to get clear. Just before Izuku was able to use his quirk, a voice was heard. All Might, have no fear, citizens, because I am here. All Might landed in front of the villain. Sludge yelling, No, not you again. All Might, I'll have you release this boy. He reeled his fist back. All Might, Detroit. And he swung his fist at the villain. All Might smash. As he made contact with the villain, All Might also grabbed Izuku. The punch scattered the villain and the air pressure made the clouds all gather directly over the site of the fight, making rain fall. Izuku then passed out, from both lack of air and the fear he felt when he imagined what the heroes might have done to him if he did successfully use his quirk. Entrance. 10 months. That's how long it had been since the Sludge villain attack. Izuku had hoped at least someone would check on him after the attack, or maybe that he'd at least be mentioned on the news, but no. Speaking of the news, he searched and searched, but no new news of Lady Nagant had been published, almost like she'd disappeared from the face of the planet. None of that mattered now though, as Izuku stood in front of the gates to UA. Today was the day of the entrance exam, and today he would prove that his quirk could be of use. He gazed upon the gate, and the buildings behind it. Izuku, I know we only met for a short time, but I'll prove you were right, Mississippi Nagant. This decision was thanks to you after all. I hope I'll be able to show you. Then, someone bumped into his shoulder and kept walking. Bakugo, quit talking to yourself like that, Deku. The explosive boy kept walking. Izuku thought back to the past few months. Izuku, at least Kaken's cooled off a bit. He then watched as Bakugo kicked another student in the shin for bumping into him. Izuku or not. Izuku walked past the gate and over to the designated exam building, quickly meeting a receptionist. Receptionist. Name and school? Izuku. Izuku Midoriya from Aldera Junior High. She sifted through a stack of plastic cards before grabbing one and handing it to him. Receptionist. Here, Hall A. Izuku took the card and thanked her before entering the auditorium his exam briefing was going to be in. He found his seat and sat down, finding that he was sat next to Bakugo. After a few more minutes the rest of the participants entered, the lights dimmed, and a hero Izuku recognized walked on stage. Present Mike. Hello, it's your favorite heroic radio host, Present Mike. The man clad in mostly leather with a large speaker around his neck made his way to the podium. Present Mike. As you all know, this is the practical exam. The written portion was done online or here yesterday. Now, on to the parts you're here for. Mike clicked a remote, and a pixel art city appeared on the screen behind him. Present Mike. The exam will take place in a fake city, though we'd appreciate it if you kept damage to a minimum to score points. You'll be fighting fake villains with a point value ranging from 1 to 3. As he spoke, 3 silhouettes appeared on the screen, each of a robot. Another voice was heard, yelling, "Excuse me, the pamphlet says that there are 4 types of villains. Are you lying to us?" Present Mike. Relax, participant 249. I was just getting to that. There is in fact a 4th villain, but it's worth 0 points. It's more of an obstacle you'll want to avoid. The boy, who Izuku noticed wore glasses and had dark blue hair, bowed in apology. I apologize. Present Mike. Don't sweat it anywho, that's really all. Just don't attack each other, okay? Alright, now get out there and get some points. Can I get a hell yeah? No one responded. Instead, the participants all got up and started leaving the auditorium, leaving Present Mike to sulk on stage. They all found their way to the locker rooms to change before heading to the test areas. Once he got there, he looked around but couldn't see Bakugo. Izuku. He must have been sent somewhere else. Makes sense though, the test is for individual strengths. If you had people from the same schools teaming up, then this test wouldn't be as effective. The blue-haired student from before the approached Izuku. Thinking of strategies? A good idea. Izuku shook his head. Izuku. No, I was just thinking about why no one here is from the same school. UA is ensuring we don't team up. Doing so could lead to inaccurate scores. They really are the best school. Izuku. Yeah. Present Mike's voice came over the speakers. Present Mike. The exam begins in 15 seconds. Prepare yourselves. Izuku. Guess we should get ready. Yes. Izuku. Well, I hope we see each other in UA. The boy nodded. Present Mike. 3, 2, 1, go Geo go. The gates to the city opened and the participants all rushed inside. Izuku took note that most people were going straight ahead, so he went left instead to get robots that weren't where the majority of the test takers would be. After a few seconds, he found one, a 2-pointer. It spotted him instantly and charged at him. It tried to attack him with one of its legs, but Izuku managed to jump back. Izuku. Come on, think using it for something this small would be overkill. People without combat quirks get in all the time, so there has to be a way maybe. Izuku ran towards the robot and jumped onto it, making it so it couldn't attack him. He then started to look for something. Izuku. If I were them, I wouldn't put it somewhere easy. He looked up and saw the tail/head of the robot. As if sensing his intention, it tried to attack, but his positioning made it miss, letting Izuku see the top of it and the kill switch that was there. Izuku found it. He leapt at it, wrapping his arms around its mechanical neck and climbed up to his head before slapping the switch, deactivating the robot. He then jumped down. Izuku. 2 points. Let's see how much I can get. Up in an observation room, several people were watching the exam. A lot of potential this year, Aniza? What seemed to be a walking-talking rodent responded. Nezzy. Yes, but I see a lot more than strength. There's tenacity, battle awareness, even a little savagery. What about you, Midnight? Midnight glanced over the monitors before stopping on one and pointing at it. Midnight. That one, he's a smart little cutie. Thinking about kill switches is one thing, but finding them is another. What do you think, Eraser? A tired-looking man responded. Eraser. While I admit he's smart, that's all he has going for him. Fighting without your quirk is irrational. Midnight. Well, now I'm curious, what is his quirk? Nizu. Well, let's see here. Nizu typed a few words into .hus computer before bringing up a file. Nizu. Izuku Midoriya. His quirk is O? Well, that's interesting. Midnight looked over his shoulder. Midnight. Interesting, alright. But that part, it sounds a little gruesome. Nizu. As all quirks can be. I'm interested now, let's keep watching. Izuku took down another robot and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Izuku. 20 points. Not bad. Before he could continue, however, he felt the ground shake and heard screams coming from up the road. He had somehow made his way back to the main road. Looking at where the screams came from, Izuku couldn't believe his eyes. It was the fourth villain, the zero-pointer, but it wasn't what he was expecting. It stood, taller than most of the buildings, easily 50 meters tall. Izuku. An obstacle? You're kidding. He was about to turn and run when he heard a scream. He looked back to see a brown-haired girl stuck under some of the rubble the zero-pointer's emergence made. Izuku, it isn't stopping, I have to help. He sprinted in the direction of the girl. Izuku, what do I do? If I use it to get her, then we'll both be killed. He saw a student who appeared to have some sort of strength-based quirk, as he pulled his hand out of a three-pointer, running towards him. He stopped the boy. Student. What the hell, man? We need to go. Izuku. There's no time. Someone's trapped over there. Student. And what do you want me to do about it? Izuku. I want you to throw me at the robot. Student. What? Are you crazy? Izuku. I'll pay you after the exam if I have to, just do it. The boy looked at the exit, then at Izuku, then sighed. Student. Fine. He grabbed Izuku by the wrists and started sprinting at the robot. Student yelling. You owe my 1,000 yen after this. After a few meters he swung and threw Izuku as hard as he could at the zero-pointer. Izuku. Alright, it's now or never. As he was flying towards the robot, he brought his hand up to his mouth. Izuku, please let this work. He bit into his hand hard. Blood began to spill out of where he bit, but that would only last for a second as a blinding flash of yellow lighting struck Izuku and formed an orb of yellow energy around him. The orb disappeared after just a second, revealing Izuku's new form. Dwarfed by the zero-pointer and only 15 meters tall, was Izuku in a large humanoid form. Steam bellowed from its newly formed skin, and the wind made its green hair fly around as it roared. Izuku's Titan had entered the field. Izuku made hard contact with the zero-pointer's head, making it sway slightly. He proceeded to punch into one of its eyes and start ripping out cables, cords, boxes, anything that seemed important. Soon after he started, the robot deactivated and fell backwards, created massive clouds of dust and debris. The brown-haired girl covered her head as a cloud flew over her head, but whipped her head back around when she heard large thumps coming towards her. Don't tell me it's getting back up. Suddenly, through the dust, the Titan's knees could be seen as it kneeled next to her. Up close it looked inhuman. Exposed teeth, no lips, angular ears, and animalistic eyes. Izuku. You okay? She looked up to where the voice came from to see Izuku coming out of the creature's neck. There were several pinkish markings around his eyes, and the muscles of the Titan seemed to be attached to his limbs, though he pulled himself out like it was nothing. A buzzer went off. Present Mike. The exam is over. Go to the nurse's office for medical attention if you need it. Izuku smiled. The test was over. He was sure he got enough points, and he finally saved someone with his quirk. Class. Once again, Izuku stood outside UA's front gate. Only this time, he was wearing the famous gray and green uniform of a UA student. He clutched his backpack straps as he looked down nervously. He made it this far, he couldn't afford to screw it up on his first day. He took in a deep breath before sighing and looking at the ground. Izuku. Okay. You just have to get through today without making people scared. Whatever you do, don't use your quirk today. He looked back at the gate and walked through it. As he walked, Izuku saw a bunch of students, many first years like himself, as well as several others he recognized the second and third years. They were helping the new students get around and even handed out maps to those they couldn't get to. Izuku. Even their everyday tasks seem heroic. Guess UA isn't the best for nothing. He walked over to the nearest upperclassman he saw, a girl with bluish hair. Izuku. Hey. She turned to him, and her eyes lit up. Hey, you're a first year, right? Izuku nodded. Izuku, why, yeah. Really? Do you need help? He nodded again, and she pulled out a small packet. Well, tell me your name and I can get you there in no time, okay? Izuku. It's Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, huh? Okay. She flipped through the packet she had until she seemed to recognize his name. Class 1A? Izuku. Yeah. This way. She spun on her heel and began walking away. Izuku quickly caught up and began walking next to her. Izuku. So, what's your name? Oh, I'm Nijire Hado, a third year. Say, what's your quirk? She looked at him curiously, even more so as he froze at the question momentarily. Hado. Oh. Is it something bad? Izuku. You could say something like that. Hado. Don't be like that. If you asked me, no quirks are bad. It's the people that use them that make them good or bad. Izuku, mumbling. I think the same. Hado. What was that? Izuku, nothing. Hado shrugged. Izuku. Hado, can I ask you a question? Hado. Sure thing, what is it? Izuku. She's not that well known, but you might know. What happened to Lady Nagant? Hado stayed quiet and thought for a few moments before responding. Hado. I think I heard something along the lines of her killing an association official. If she did, a hero like her would be put away for life. Izuku. I see. Hado then stopped. Hado. Anyway, we're here. Have nice first day, Midoriya. I hope I get to see you in action soon. She then went back the way they came, leaving Izuku in front of a large door. Izuku. Well, only one thing left to do. He grabbed the door handle and slid it open, revealing a lively classroom. Many students, his new classmates, were hanging around and talking with each other. He heard two familiar voices. Take your feet off of that desk. Bakugo. You talking to me? What? Did your middle school shove a stick up your ass? Before he could respond, the blue-haired boy from the entrance exam noticed Izuku. Oh, it's you. He rushed over to Izuku. I'm glad you were able to get in. Izuku scratched the back of his head. Izuku. Why, yeah, same here. I forgot to introduce myself then. I'm Tenya Ida. Izuku. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Another voice appeared behind them. I recognize that hair. You're the giant that saved me. Izuku turned around in surprise to see the brown-haired girl the zero-pointer almost crushed. Izuku. My name's Midoriya. I heard Achiko Uraraka here. Eraser. If you're just here to make friends, then you can leave now. The three students at the door all turned to look at the sudden voice, just to see a man in a yellow sleeping bag. He ate from what appeared to be a pouch of applesauce and stood up, shedding his sleeping bag. He then walked past the three and into the room to address the rest of the class. Eraser. I am Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher for the year. Aizawa pulled out a blue and white uniform in a plastic bag. Aizawa. These are your P uniforms. Go to the locker rooms and out them on. Meet me at the P grounds in 10 minutes. He then left as quickly as he appeared. Ida. I have a feeling we shouldn't keep him waiting. Uraraka. Agreed. The class left the room and did as their new teacher told them. As Aizawa waited outside, he thought back to a meeting he and Niza had with a parent the previous day. Aizawa knocked on the door of Niza's office. Nizu, come in. He opened the door to see Niza sitting behind his desk, and sitting in front of It was a rather short woman with dark green hair that, despite being tied up in a bun, still reached down to her shoulders. Nizu. Please sit down. Aizawa nodded and sat in a second chair in front of Niza's desk. Nizu. Now, Aizawa, this woman here is Inko Midoriya, the mother of one of your new students. Aizawa turned to look at her. Aizawa. I'll do my best, ma'am. Inko. I don't doubt that. It's about my son, well, his quirk. Nizu. Ah, yes. Titan, right? She nodded. Aizawa. We already know about its activation requirements, as well as its additions. Inko. That isn't why I'm here. He doesn't like using it. This caught Aizawa's curiosity. Aizawa. Is that why he only used it at the end of the exam? She nodded. Inko. Most likely. You've seen it, even activating it can be harmful to others around him because of the heat. He's gained some confidence recently, so I can't say for sure, but I suspect he won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. He's gotten a lot of trouble because of how dangerous it is, so please be patient with him. He looked up as he heard the students exit the building. Aizawa. Not bad, but you're all far too slow. Uraraka raised her hand. Aizawa. Yes, Uraraka? Uraraka. Sir, why are we out here? We're missing orientation. Aizawa. Yue is famous for continuously pumping out top pros. How do you think that is? Our freedom. We instructors aren't forced to stick to the regular curriculum. Which brings me to what we're doing now, a quirk apprehension test. Like those athletics tests you did in junior high, but with your quirks. A pink-skinned girl spoke up. Ashido. We get to use our quirks? This is gonna be fun. Aizawa. Fun? Alright, let's make this a game. Student with the lowest score is expelled. He eyed Izuku as he finished speaking. Uraraka. But that's not fair. Aizawa. Life itself isn't fair. Natural disasters, villain attacks, murders. None of those things are fair. Bakugo. The blonde boy grunted. Bakugo. Yeah? Aizawa. Come here. As Bakugo approached him, Aizawa handed him a softball. Aizawa. Stand in the circle and throw this ball using your quirk. You can do anything, just stay in the circle. Bakugo smirked and took the ball. Bakugo. Now you're talking. Aizawa stepped out of the white circle as Bakugo prepared his throw. The boy wound back his arm before flinging it forwards. Just before the ball left his hand, he let off a large explosion. Bakugo, yelling, die. The ball went flying across the field. After a few moments, Aizawa pulled up his phone, showing a number. Aizawa. 705.3 meters. That is what we're doing here. Now, Midoriya. Izuku. Huh? Aizawa. Whether you use your quirk or not is up to you. Just get higher than last. Izuku. Yes sir, actually, do you mind if I do it now? Aizawa shrugged. Aizawa. If you're up for it. Everyone get away from him. Though confused, the rest of the class walked over to Aizawa, away from Izuku. Aizawa. Do it. Izuku nodded and lifted his hand to his mouth. Izuku. Are ready? Aizawa nodded. Izuku took a deep breath before immediately biting his hand. The class recoiled as they noticed he drew blood, though they didn't see it for long as he was struck by a bolt of yellow lightning, and the energy hid him from sight momentarily. When it disappeared and the dust settled, Izuku's 15-meter Titan form stood where he once did. Uraraka. Oh, it's even cooler now. Jiru. But why is he naked? Aizawa. Because that isn't him. Unlike most gigantification quirks, this forms an outer body around his actual body. Think of it as a meat-based robot and he's controlling it. Yelling, Midoriya. Izuku looked down at his teacher. Aizawa yelling. We're doing the 15-meter dash, first line up next to those lines. He nodded and stepped over to the lines. Aizawa yelling. Ready? Go. He started the dash, and then ended it. The robots at either end announced his time. Robots. 2.7 seconds. Mineta. That's cheating, he's too big. Aizawa. Then you better try harder than you've ever tried before. The rest of the tests were relatively the same. Izuku's large size gave him a massive advantage in most of the tests, always coming in either first or second. It wasn't until the long-distance run that changed. Halfway through it, Izuku's Titan collapsed and the class all watched as he crawled out of its nape and laid down on top of it. Aizawa walked over. Aizawa. Is something wrong? Izuku. I don't have the energy to keep the Titan running. Aizawa. Alright, you're done with this test then. He picked up Izuku and took him back over to the class. He proceeded to score last in the long-distance run and 14th on the ball throw. Aizawa watched as the students left the school for the day. Nizu approached him. Nizu. Not a single expulsion? Aizawa shook his head. Nizu. I was sure you'd expel Midoriya. Aizawa. He confronted his fear today. His mother was right, he doesn't like it. Even just watching him use it was frustrating. It was like watching a child try to avoid ants on a sidewalk, scared of what his foot could do to them. He swallowed it to pass, but that's after he was threatened with expulsion. Nizu. So? Aizawa. Like I said, his mother was right. He'll only use when he deems it absolutely necessary. That will change though, or this world of heroes will eat him alive. Combat Training PT-1. It had been a week since the school year started for Class 1A. Since the first day, it seemed to Izuku that Aizawa didn't really like him, especially with the glares he'd been sending the poor boy's way during homeroom while things were quiet. But even so, Izuku shouldn't be nervous today, right? Today's the first practical heroics lesson of the year after all. He smiled in excitement as the door was flung open and a very familiar man appeared in an odd pose. I am here coming through the door like a hero. Blonde hair with two bangs standing on end, a hulking 7'3" frame, glowing blue eyes, and a blinding smile. All Might walked into the room and the class collectively began to freak out. The man reached the front podium and began his class. All Might. Welcome to your first class of Heroics 101 where I shall forge you into the best first years in history and for our first lesson. He reached into a back pocket on his costume and pulled out a card, showing it to the class. All Might, Combat Training. The whole class cheered, except for Izuku whose smile became a terrified facade of a grin. Izuku Combat? Please don't be against each other. All Might put the card away and continued. All Might. That's not all, you can't be expected to do heroics without some gear of your own. He pressed a button and 20 parts of the wall extended outwards, revealing numbered cases. The one was about double the size of the rest. All Might. Using the design requests you all sent in before school started, UA commissioned professional design agencies to create your very own costumes. Grab the case with your number and join me in the control room of Ground Beta. He then rushed out of the room as the class got up. Izuku counted the cases until he got to his number, which happened to be the oversized case. He picked it up and found that it was lighter than he expected, though it was still pretty heavy. It wasn't until he made it to the locker room that someone mentioned the case. Ida. What did you design, Midoriya? Izuku. I don't really know, to be honest. Well, I know what I submitted, but there's a part one suggested but didn't actually give a design for. Kaminari. Well, they must have custom made something kinda big. Just look at the case. Tokoemi. Yes, it is much larger than the ones we have. Izuku, not used to being the center of attention, looked away from his classmates and back at his case. Izuku. Why, yeah, well, let's see what's in here. He flipped the latches open and opened the case, revealing the contents. Sitting at the top were the instructions and a uniform made up of a white button-up shirt, loose light gray pants that would be tucked into a pair of brown boots, a light brown jacket, a brown waist skirt, and a harness that seemed to have two holsters of some kind near either side of the chest. That was what caught Izuku's attention, however. What did was the bulky gear that took up the rest of the case. An odd-looking winch device with two parts on either side that would go around his waist. That part was attached to two more parts that were identical to each other, both being large rectangular boxes with what appeared to be gas tanks secured to the tops and a single hole at one end of each. There were several attachment points for the bulky assembly to be connected to the harness. The last thing in the case were two hard rubber clubs that were 3 feet long and 2.5 inches thick. Kirishima. Are you gonna need help putting that on? Izuku. Maybe? All Might stood inside the observation room, waiting for the students. After a few minutes he heard voices and footsteps coming from beyond the door. Soon all of 1A passed through the door, except for Izuku and Kirishima, who both hit their heads on either side of the door frame as they were reading the instruction manual for Izuku's gear. All Might. Are you two okay? Both boys nodded and walked into the room. All Might. Well, what's got you so distracted? Izuku held up the manual. Izuku. The instructions for the omnidirectional movement gear that I'm wearing. I didn't design it. He gestured to the assembly around his waist and legs. All Might. I see support items like that come with a learning curve. You'll get the hang of it now. On to the lesson. He gestured to the large screen behind himself, which showed the outside of a building. All Might. You all will be fighting against each other in teams of 2, heroes and villains. The villains will be holed up inside of this building with a papier-mâché bomb. The heroes will enter and either capture the villains by wrapping tape around them, or capture the weapon by touching it. The villains win if they can capture the heroes or stall them till time runs out. Any questions? Only Izuku raised his hand. All Might. Yes, Midoriya? Izuku. We're staying inside, right? All Might gave him a thumbs up. All Might, correct. Izuku thanked him as the man pulled out 2 boxes. All Might. Now draw lots. Combat Training PT2. Izuku stared at the ball he pulled from one of the boxes to see the letter H on it. Looking around, he found Sue, who was the only one who hadn't found his partner yet, and walked over to her. She heard the clunking of his gear before he even got close. Izuku. Hey Ajui. Guess we're teammates. He let out a nervous chuckle. Sue. I guess we are, Midoriya. Kero. All Might. Now that you're all paired up, it's time to decide the first match. He reached into the boxes again and pulled out 2 balls, one labeled A and another labeled D. All Might. Team A will be the heroes and Team D will be the villains. The Tokoyami, Uraraka, Bakugo, and Ida left the room after collecting their supplies. It had been nearly an hour into class and 3 matches had already gone by. Due to improvised plans and a small lucky streak, Tokoyami and Uraraka defeated Bakugo and Ida. The second match ended quickly as Todoroki just froze the whole building, and the third match actually went without mass destruction, unlike the first match. Only 4 more teams remained to go. All Might pulled the balls from the boxes and read them aloud. All Might. Heroes are Team H, villains are Team J. Izuku looked over to Team J, Kirishima and Siro, and gave them a nervous smile. All Might. Grab your tape and communication devices and get a move on. The 4 students did just that as they left the observation room. When they reached the building, Kirishima spoke up. Kirishima. No hard feelings when we beat you, right? Izuku laughed lightly. Izuku. All right. Kirishima smiled and nodded as he and Siro went inside the building to prepare. It was Tsu's turn to talk. Tsu. Midoriya. Izuku. What's up, Ajui? Tsu. Before that, you need to know I tend to speak my mind. Izuku sighed. Izuku. Trust me, I'm used to people doing that. What is it you want? Tsu, not expecting the 180 from clumsy and nervous to clear and moody, took a moment to respond. Tsu. I just wanted to ask, why are you so hesitant to use your quirk? You could get people killed in the future if you don't use it. Kero. Izuku, mumbling. Using it kills people anyway. Tsu. What was that? He sighed again. Izuku. It doesn't matter. That's why I'm here though, so my quirk can be used to help others. And to not let someone down. Lady Nagant. It had been months since she appeared in his room and unknowingly set him on his current path to being a hero. She had a quirk meant to harm, a quirk that was lethal when in plain use, and so did he, at least that's how he saw it. If she could be a hero, if she could help the general public even a little with her power, then so could he. He had to admit, when compared to other students, she had become his all might. Tsu. Midoriya? Are you okay? Izuku. HM? Yeah, I'm fine. Tsu. Were you thinking about that person? Izuku nodded. Izuku. Yeah. She gave me the push I needed, I won't let her down. Tsu. Good luck. Do you remember anything from the manual for that gear? Izuku. The basics. Hopefully that'll be enough. Especially for my plan. Tsu. Carol, you have one? Izuku nodded. Tsu. Tell me. Kirishima and Siro were standing in the hallway outside the bomb room on the 4th floor when the buzzer to start the match went off. All Might. The heroes may enter the building. Siro. Man, I kinda feel bad. Midoriya is coming at us without his quirk and with gear that looks pretty complicated. Kirishima. Don't underestimate him, or that gear. He took in that manual pretty fast, and that gear is supposed to give him the ability to fight strong opponents without his quirk. Siro looked at him confused as he taped off the door. Siro. How? Kirishima. I don't know the ins and outs, but that manual told me all I needed to know. Stay on your toes. Siro. Right. I still say Ajri is our main problem. He then turned his head down a hallway like he heard something. Siro. Speaking of which. The two boys watched the hallway as Tsu hopped around the corner and landed on the wall. Siro, get her. He launched a piece of tape at her as Kirishima charged forward. Tsu dodged the tape and landed on the floor, ducking underneath a hardened punch from Kirishima. She jumped over the red-haired boy, landing in front of Siro on her hands, and kicked him further down the hall before she was hit to the side by Kirishima. She bounced off the wall and rolled away from a kick. She was about to jump back when her arm became wrapped in tape and Siro pulled her towards him. She felt capture tape get wrapped around her wrist as Kirishima approached. Siro. Got ya. All Might. Tsuyu Ajri has been captured. Kirishima. Now it's just Midoriya. Siro. Yeah. Where is he, Ajri? Tsu. Midoriya? Karo right behind you. Kirishima looked behind Siro to see the three of them were standing in front of a rather large window and right outside was Izuku, flying feet first into the window, clubs attached to hose triggers. A burst of white gas appeared behind him as he suddenly picked up speed. Neither boy could react fast enough to protect themselves as Izuku's boots broke the glass and his clubs met the sides of their heads, knocking them to the ground. He then proceeded to spin in the air due to hitting his opponents and slamming face first into the wall. Thankfully it seemed that the force was enough to knock out both members of the villain team. He laid on the floor as All Might's voice came over the speakers once more. All Might. Villain team is incapacitated, heroes win. Tsu appeared in Izuku's vision. Tsu. Are you good? Karo. Izuku. That was a little fast. She helped him stand and saw as a bit of blood trickled from both nostrils. He stumbled back but straightened as steam began to pour from his nose, eyes, and ears. He would need to get used to this new gear or it might just be the death of him.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.